Welcome back for our final lesson, coaching. There are three aspects of coaching that we will be touching on: communication and building relationships, why identifying and utilizing strengths is important, and applying these tools in the real world through communication techniques. It is important to learn and apply the tools of mindfulness, energy management, and openness for yourself prior to applying the coaching principles. By learning to accurately assess and understand your own and others' emotions, you are able to empathically connect with others and support them effectively. This leads to increased levels of trust, understanding, and improved communication, all critical factors for effective leadership, allowing you to openly exchange and discuss ideas and both provide and receive feedback from others in a safe, judgment-free environment, critical to coaching. As mindful leaders, we use our energy effectively to focus on solutions and how to move forward, make progress, and continue to evolve ourselves and lead others in a positive manner. According to John Whitmore in his book, Coaching Performance, coaching is unlocking a person's potential to maximize their own performance. It is helping them to learn rather than teaching them. Building relationships with your team is critical for the coaching process to be effective. Learn about your people, talk to them about more than work-related items, find a common connection, and most importantly, find out what they are passionate about and what they value. When you can learn what they are passionate about, you can tap into their strengths. When you understand what they value, you can help them be effective long-term through incorporating their value set into their choices. When a person feels valued or that you care to know these things, this builds trust and confidence, two critical keys in keeping your employees engaged. Through building trust, your people are more comfortable talking about their passions. Passions are a great way to learn talents and strengths. A strength starts with an innate talent, a passion, a tendency to think and behave in a certain way. And this ultimately becomes a strength when it's refined by skills, knowledge, and practice, and then consciously applied in a situation. Far easier to find their best role as well. How do we put them into practice once we recognize? When we put the time into our associate to recognize their strengths and learn what they're passionate about, allow them to voice where they feel they can be most impactful, we can develop a path for them to best utilize these strengths, in turn building their confidence in themselves and in us, which in turn builds their self-efficacy, two primal needs. When they are feeling confident, they now have the motivation to excel and be at their best, which allows them to be fully engaged. Connecting with others is one of the most effective ways one can lead. In the book, The Leadership Challenge, by James Kouzes and Barry Posner, they say, when leadership is a relationship founded on trust and confidence, people take risks, they make changes, keep organizations and movements alive. Through that relationship, leaders turn their constituents into leaders themselves. In both maintaining and strengthening relationships, it is important to value people for who they are. Ask questions, really listen, and develop a mutual commitment. This is when they start building the self-efficacy to self-drive and make choices to better themselves and the business, and that in turn drives engagement. Encouraging others to take a chance, going along with them even when you don't know what the outcomes will be, but helping them learn, and having the courage to support their decisions is something you can do to help lead. You must also develop your own communication skills, which we will talk about later in the session, and in turn help others to develop theirs. Communication is a very powerful strategy when you're working to accomplish a goal. Once you have established the relationship, one of the most powerful things to be sure to communicate and get feedback on is strengths. This graph, based on a study conducted by Gallup, provides a great guide that speaks to what happens when we are able to speak to the strengths of our people, and they feel recognized when we do so. Their performance and how they feel amongst the department excels, They clearly know where they stand, why they matter to the business, and will give the business that much more. The results show us two very important pieces in regards to keys and how to lead in order to produce the most engagement out of your employees. When an individual does not feel like their manager is genuinely interested in them and their well-being, it significantly affects engagement. Look at those percentages on the right side. We all have an innate need to be part of something, and relationships are a huge piece of great leadership. Another study outside of this one found it to be the highest driver of work engagement. And this backs that as well, because regardless if it was positive or negative feedback, they were more engaged. When you then choose to focus on what your employee excels in and what they are doing well, the engagement takes another significant jump. I recently worked with a group where an individual shared his own experience related to this topic. It was his first job out of college, and he was given the task to fire an employee that had been with the company for 40 years. Nice of them to leave it to the new guy, right? Upon speaking to the individual and learning the wealth of knowledge this individual possessed, the manager asked HR if he could have 6 months with the individual before he had to fire him. He was granted the time and was able to help this individual become a major asset to the company. What he realized in that one conversation was after managers continually not listening to what he had to offer, he quit offering solutions, feedback, or even effort. He was merely a warm body in an office chair, hence why they wanted to fire him. Upon being given a chance, an open ear, and a little confidence, he became a major asset. The more frequent, specific, and strategic the praise is, the stronger the employee becomes. The speed reading study from the University of Nebraska that was conducted in the 1950s provides a great example of how our strengths grow exponentially more than our weaknesses, even in a controlled environment where equal time is spent on both. As the study shows, prior to providing further education, the gifted group was reading about 350 words per minute. The regular group, about 90 words per minute. They took both groups through the exact same training. Upon completion of the training, the gifted group excelled. This was their strength. They now were reading over 2,900 words per minute, an 828% increase. The regular group also increased, which was great, to 350 words per minute. But as we see, when you nurture your nature, you have more room to improve your areas of natural talent than your weakness. Hard to see sometimes because this is normal and innate to you. Your return on investment will be much higher if you stick to your natural talents. Most people are not able to recognize their own talents or that they're even a strength because it is just natural. But we are very aware of what we don't do well. This is when the relationships and talking to your people becomes so important. Help them recognize those talents. Help them utilize those strengths. Help them refine them. Most people are not actively spending time developing their talents. So this is a great place to get ahead of the game for yourselves and others. The more frequent, specific, and strategic the feedback is when helping one refine their strengths and skill set, the more effective. Teams that focus on their strengths are 12.5% more productive. People who use their strengths every day are 6 times more likely to be engaged in the job. That is how you build businesses and keep your employees. Positive comments actually fuel the release of the trust embodying hormone oxytocin. Negative comments release the stress hormone cortisol. As we learned in earlier sessions, that cortisol can just tear our bodies apart. This study, also done by Gallup, hones in on what you guys deal with on an extreme level every day, whether that is what you individually are feeling or the people working for you are feeling. This is your reality. Working from your strengths, helping your people work from their strengths is one more actual well-being tool to ensure we minimize these negative emotional experiences and prevent the continued effect. It is a powerful tool to be able to provide your employees and yourselves. And the coolest part is that this tool is innate to each of you. It is part of you, and we need to continue to grow those tools once we have identified them. And it aids in an increase in our overall well-being. Now that we understand the key parts to focus on, how do we ensure the relationship starts off on the right foot and our messages are received in an effective manner? We need to learn a new language, and we need to accept that we all play a role in how we communicate, whether we are the listener or the giver. There are verbal and nonverbal cues, and they all contribute to the way our message is received on the other end. I want you to think about these three elements and to consider what it looks like when you are off message. What are some of the cues, facial expressions, and nonverbals you think you send that send a different message that you are not intending to send? Ask someone that you trust if you're unsure. Now ask yourself, what are some of the situations that may be causing you to be off message? The first step in better communication is to engage in active listening. In order to be really effective at active listening, we need to apply all of our senses, or advance to level 3, listening. To better understand, let's look at what each of these levels mean. Again, the first step in better communication is to engage in active listening. In order to be really effective at active listening, we need to apply all of our senses. Level 1 listening is when we listen to speak. Our own message is more important to us than what they may be trying to tell us. Level 2 listening is when we listen to actually hear what the other person is saying. And level 3 listening is when we listen to understand. We are not looking for what the other person is saying to us, but what they are not saying. Oftentimes, people do not share their true feelings about a situation or problem the first time that they describe it. They may share one thing, but actually be veiling their true need or barrier underneath. This is when the development of relationships prior to becomes critical. Learning to pick up on cues, learning to be actively engaged in your listening, looking up from your computer and giving that person your full presence, being mindful in your conversation. That is level 3 listening. Take the example of Sally. Once the highest performer, has now been struggling to meet her sales target 3 months in a row. When we communicate with Sally using level 2 listening, we may hear all about the lack of support, marketing materials, and the new territory that is getting in the way of her hitting her sales target. But when we communicate with Sally from level 3, we begin to understand that Sally is really struggling with some changes at home. Her husband, Bill, also travels for her job. Their teenage daughter is struggling at school, and neither one of them are home to make sure work is completed on time. Sally really values her job with the company, but she is not sure she can make the travel and late nights work for the changing needs of her family. She wonders if there might be an internal role she could play and train some of the newer salespeople to have the same kind of track record that she has always had. Sally is a valuable employee and has been a high performer for many years. Listening at level 3 would allow you to consider alternative work arrangements and potentially secure the sales trainer you have always been looking for. And you are able to tap into another strength of hers. You were able to keep a key employee through utilizing the appropriate and most effective communication technique. Over the next 2 weeks, start paying attention to which technique you use most often and how this affects, both positively or negatively, your relationships and coaching ability. We will discuss this more in class. Frequent, specific, strategic. This applies to your words, listening, and communicating. Over the next 2 weeks, continue to build awareness around these tools. Check out the additional resources on the Learning Portal and engage in the exercises provided and give feedback to your fellow coworkers as well. Thank you.